Christina Lovio-George is the founder, president, and CEO of Lovio-George. She founded Lovio-George 25 years ago in a 1904 building located in the heart of Midtown Detroit, at a time when most businesses were leaving the city. Starting the business with just herself and one other employee, Mrs. Lovio-George now leads a progressive team of communication and creative professionals, and her agency is a leader amongst Detroit and regional public relations and marketing agencies. She worked with the Detroit Super Bowl 40 host committee, 1D, a collaboration to transform Detroit into one of the world's great regions, and Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, to name a few. She was the first woman to serve as the chairman of the board of the Detroit Metropolitan Convention and Visitors Bureau, and currently serves as a member of the executive committee and board of directors. Our second panelist is also a former honoree, and that is Sue Nine. Ms. Nine discovered early on during her college education that her passion was for helping people and organizations. This led her to dedicate her adult life to philanthropy. She has involved herself with many organizations throughout the Metro Detroit area, including the American Red Cross, American Lung Association, Detroit Symphony Orchestra, St. Vincent de Paul, Salvation Army, Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeastern Michigan, Visiting Nurses Association, Women's Survival Center, and Preservation Bloomfield, just to name a few of the things that she's engaged with. Our third panelist, another past honoree, Juliette Thorpe Okotie-Eboh. Juliette serves as Senior Vice President of Community Affairs Administration for MGM Grand Detroit Casino. She is responsible for overseeing all community affairs activities for the property, including community outreach, maintaining relationships with community organizations, serving as company spokesperson, managing and executing community relations programs, as well as diversity initiatives. A native Detroiter, Juliette has a wealth of community affairs and diversity experience, including serving the Detroit Medical Center, Detroit City Government, New Detroit, and Comerica Incorporated. On the international front, Juliette has served as Deputy Project Manager in Benin City, Nigeria, where she directed the preparation of master plans for 11 Nigerian cities and towns. So, please welcome our panelists. Now, the first question that I would pose, and we'll start with you, Christina, and then we'll just ask each of the three of you to respond, is, did you have a female mentor or defining moment that shaped your career? And what can you share from it that will help someone in our audience today?
Well, thank you, all of you, for attending this. I think there is an enormous amount of energy in gatherings like this, and we have Eddie to thank for convening us. When I started the agency in 1982, there weren't a lot of women-owned businesses in business. So I didn't have a lot to draw on, even though I had a very strong grandmother and a very strong mother. I think most of my early mentors were men. And when I opened the business on Forest and 3rd, everyone thought the brains flew out of my head. So it was, there wasn't a lot of support, I guess, in those early years. But one thing in particular, when I was preparing for this talk, I did a lot of volunteering at the University of Detroit Mercy. Peter Remington asked me to sit on a committee, and I never left. And so one of those people was Sister Maureen Fay, who happened to be the only woman on a bank board in Detroit. and she served for a number of years. Anyway, every year the bank, which was then National Bank of Detroit, would have a review of our accounts. And financing, as you know, is always key for women. And every year they would change the finish line because a new officer would be appointed, a new loan officer. And every year I would have met the goals from the year before, and they changed them. And finally I said, you know, what do I have to do? I pledge my house every year. For a line of credit, I want a point reduction. And the guy said, well, we really can't do that. And I said, why? And he said, because the bank needs to know you're committed to your business. And I stood up and I said, this meeting's over. So I called 3 banks. 3 banks came to the offices. 1 was a bank president. They all said they would give me what I needed. And I said to Franklin Bank, that's terrific. How many women do you have on your board? And he said, well, none. And I said, you have no women on your board when you specialize in small business? And he said, no. And I said, well, I can't do business with you. So I called Sister Faye and I said, tell NBD that they saved a customer they don't care about because you sit on their board. And she said, tell me more about the story. And I told her. A couple of weeks later, I get a call from NBD, and everything I asked for, they did. And I called her back and I said, did you say anything? And she said, you're damn right I did. And that was the defining moment because it was women helping women.
Interestingly enough, because you can tell by my background in perhaps when I was asked to join the panel today, that I have not technically really ever run a business, but I have been involved in, almost embarrassingly, probably 3 dozen 501c3 type operations over my long-time career. I'm probably as senior as most people can get and still do this. And when I think about the defining moment that changed my career, I would say that my parents were probably my best mentor. My mother, more interestingly than my father, in that she always believed that her daughter could do anything. It didn't matter what it was that I was asked, she was positive I not only could do it, but that I would do it well. My father, I think, was a bit more of a skeptic, but he gave me the greatest gift of my life. I began college as a full scholarship student in the College of Nursing. My mother was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, and I had never really ever anticipated that I would do anything other than be a nurse. And I did very well in school. I was a relatively easy student, and at the same time, I was on the debate team. I had debated all through high school competitively. I had done speech work pretty regularly, and I went out for the debate team in college, and I was somewhat passionate about the activity. And we were a pretty successful unit. And at the end of the first year in nursing, I came home after the debate picnic with a bunch of the other debaters. And this is pretty corny to play pinochle while my mother made popcorn. And on Sunday morning, my parents asked me back to the breakfast table after they had apparently reviewed some of their thoughts and said, my father said to me, your mom and I are not convinced that you want to be a nurse. And I had really never ever suspected that I wouldn't be a nurse. And I said, really, what did you think I wanted to be? He said, I haven't a clue. He said, but we don't think you have the passion for nursing that we see that you have for this activity. But I still thought that was probably a fairly foregone conclusion because my rather German father was a little on the tight side and my scholarship paid for everything, so I figured I would still be a nurse. So I said, well, Dad, my scholarship's only good for nursing. And he said, it's a little of our money and it's your entire life. You surely better like what you do. And I went to school the next day and changed my curriculum. That was a very defining moment and the best gift